Welcome to the airport. Today we're going to look at the Beech Musketeer, or the Baby Beech, and have a look at some of the operating costs and flight characteristics of this airplane. This model has a 160 horse O-320 Lycoming engine, about a 900 pound useful load, so it's a pretty good performing airplane. 130 mile an hour cruise if you push her along at about 2550, 2600. Very big and spacious, lots of room inside, very quickly removed rear seat for stowing things, nice big large baggage door for getting into the aircraft. Big hinged cowling with two clasps either side, and they provide excellent access to the engine compartment for checking oil and general servicing or any off-field repairs. Very sturdy, rugged, well-built airplane.
Peterborough traffic, Foxtrot Golf Romeo Romeo is on apron 2. We'll be taxiing Echo Bravo, crossing 27, Golf 4, runway 13 at Peterborough. Welcome to the airplane. We're flying the 1963 Beech Musketeer today. This is a first production year example of the airplane. This one's serial number 144, so it's pretty early, and it's definitely a favorite of mine for flying. It's a really rock solid airplane. Nice wide geared stance, good beach construction, and it's a really, really nice airplane. Basically, they're the Baby Beech. They were introduced so that Beechcraft would have something to compete with 172s and Pipers, like PA-28 Cherokees. Its original price was about
now 3 miles final, runway 27, full stop.
$13,000. And in 1963, when you compare that to about the $54,000 for a Bonanza, you can see the very drastic price difference. Okay, we'll go ahead and take off, and then we can do some more talking once we're in the air. Short field departure from Peterborough here, with traffic on the final for 27. Peterborough traffic, Golf Romeo Romeo will be departing runway 13, right turnout southbound, with the traffic final for runway 27. Okay, full power's developed. We got first notch of flaps. Away we go. So yeah, there was initial bit of pushback from a lot of the Beech distributors about building such a small airplane, and there's some really wonderful stories about the introduction of the aircraft. There's a book called The Fabulous Flight of the Three Musketeers. It's about the promotional tour that they did around the United States to promote the aircraft initially. Okay, 500 feet above ground. We've not got any fuel leaking out of our wings or oil coming out of our cowlings. Flaps are retracted. So the airplane was a way to get people into a Beechcraft product and then hopefully step them up to their Bonanzas or Barons and things like that. The idea from first sort of concept to type certificate ready airplane only took just over 16 months, which is quite phenomenal. They really got on with it and made it all happen. If you push it along, which they're actually quite happy to push along, 2,500, 2,600 RPM, you can get about 130 miles an hour of cruise out of them if you've got some weight in the baggage compartment, and you're looking about 9.5 gallons an hour. Now, the airplane carries 60 gallons of fuel, so you've got a real good fuel range. If you slow down to 2,300 RPM, you don't see much of a reduction in your fuel consumption, maybe a gallon or so, but you do lose a lot of airspeed, like 25 miles an hour, something like that. So it's more economical to push it along quickly. Because you got such a big cabin and big heavy wing and everything else, it's not super great at chugging along slowly. Now, the early models with the 160 horsepower, they do suffer when you get to gross weight. If you've got 4 people in here and a good amount of fuel, you're at your gross weight, the climb performance really degrades, and you start needing quite large runways. I've had this in and out of 1900 foot, 1800 foot runways, but light and on my own. It's not an airplane that's well known for its short field performance. You know, we just departed from 2,000 feet with obstacles. It's not a super hot day. You know, it's about 6 or 7 degrees out on the ground. We had a little bit of headwind, and we're at full fuel, so we've got 60 gallons of fuel on board, and you know, it was happy, but it's not a rocket ship. To avoid the Continental IO 346 engine, because it's a bit of a peculiar one, and you could have a real hard time finding parts, and when you do find them, they can be very, very expensive. Now, they kept that engine for a few years, basically until 1967. In 1968, they introduced a number of different variants of the airplane, including sort of a 2-seat trainer, 150 horsepower version. But they also offered this aircraft with a O-320 180 horsepower Lycoming, and they upped the gross weight a little bit as well. So that was really fantastic, and they are very desirable airplane. From there, they just kept going up and up and up. You got the IO 360 fuel-injected 200 horse and a constant speed. That airplane pretty much had the biggest useful load of any of the small sort of 4-seat fixed gear aircraft. You know, over 1,000 pounds of useful load, and was quite a performer. And then they went on to, like, the Super Musketeer, which they renamed after a couple of years into the Sierra, and that ended up with retractable gear, and that sort of competed with the Arrow product. This price is going to vary all over the place with the Musketeer, depending on what model of airplane you're exactly looking at. You can basically see them down as low as 25,000 Canadian dollars, and they can go up to and top sort of 60,000. All depends on what year. Avionics, again, is a real big factor, and, you know, the condition of your engine. Are they retractable gear Sierra model? I mean, they can go up even higher in value there, but the sort of 160 horse or 180 horse ones can be got for, you know, very comparative prices, maybe a little less than a 172. They're not quite as popular, but you normally see 1 or 2 of these airplanes at sort of every airport. Now, your annual is going to be a little bit more than your standard 172 for the Musketeer. It's about the same as a PA-28 Cherokee. You're looking about the $1,100 range. Insurance does seem to be a little higher, and I think that's because the airplane's just not quite as common. So whereas your 172 is probably going to be about $1,000 for your average sort of GA pilot, you can expect to probably pay like $1,300, $1,350 for a Musketeer, with sort of like a $35,000 hull value. Obviously, you know, insurance can vary a lot depending on someone's experience, but it does seem to be a little bit more money. Parts are pretty standard, obviously, as long as you've got the either the O-320 or O-360 Lycoming engines. You know, everything under the hood is very standard. Airframe parts, I haven't had any problems getting hold of anything that we've needed. They do land a little differently. They've got a trailing landing gear system with like a rubber shock disc in them, so no oleos, no spring steel, and nothing wrong with it. Just takes a little bit to get used to, but again, it's a very solid flying airplane once you get up and get going. So that's really fantastic. Now, as I mentioned before, the performance is not the best once you get heavy or once you get hot, and you can really see that the poorer performance in the 160 horsepower version when you're at that gross weight. So obviously the 180 or the 200 is really helps there. You can get micro VG kit for them, a certified product for the wings, and the other 1963 has it. that I look after, and just from talking with the owners of that aircraft and also kind of looking at some of the reviews from other Musketeer owners with them, it's a really fantastic upgrade. You're looking at a sort of 9 to 10 mile an hour reduction in the stall speed on the aircraft, and that just really lets the thing get up and climb, and assists obviously greatly in the landing as well. This thing likes to land at 80 miles an hour. If you get much slower than that at all, it's really not happy. So that vortice generator kit can be a really great add-on if you're thinking of doing any sort of short field performance work on a regular basis, or if you live in an area with high temperatures or maybe high altitudes. So the Musketeer is obviously a low wing, and that really changes your view, your vantage point. It's a very different type of flying from the high wing. It's arguably maybe not as good for looking at things on the ground, but you've got such a large cockpit. It's so big and spacey. You got this huge, great big windshield, great big side windows, and it flies, as long as you've got the power up a little bit, it flies very nose low. And what I find is most Cessna pilots, when they get in, they'll set an attitude that they're used to, seeing the cowling in reference to the sky, and they'll just keep climbing because the thing's too nose high, and it just keeps climbing and climbing and climbing. So when you're actually in cruise, the nose is very low. You know, it kind of looks like when you're flying a 170, it's got a much more nose low attitude. And you've got wonderful view out the front of the airplane, and you sit in the pilot's seats right at the sort of leading edge of the wing, so you've still got good view down and ahead of the wing. And if you're looking at buying an airplane, I really wouldn't write one of these off as being a potential option. It really is a fantastic airplane to fly. They're really solid, they're really big and spacious, and it's just so different than a Cessna that if you've learned to fly in a Cessna, or if that's all you've flown, if you've got the opportunity to go for a fly in one, I would really recommend it, because you may find that you really do enjoy flying it. It's a very different way to enjoy some general aviation. So I hope you enjoyed coming for a short little flight with me in the Musketeer today. Another beautiful day. We're getting really lucky with this weather at the moment. I hope you found it useful. If you get an opportunity to go for a fly in a Musketeer, I'd strongly recommend it. And if you're looking at buying an airplane, I would make sure it's on your list of potential aircraft to own. If you enjoyed the video, please remember to like and subscribe to the channel to get updates about future videos we're doing. And happy tailwinds.
So a great feature with the airplane is the large cabin, and the back seats have got a lot of space in them as well, and this back seat removes very easily. You can leave the lower cushion in and just take out the backrest so that you can get large items through from the baggage compartment door, which is very spacious, and bring them up into the aircraft. There you go. That's it. I mean, literally seconds. It's a little trickier to put back in, and I find it's best done through the baggage door, but I'm going to say maybe 20 to 30 seconds to reinstall. It's just a case of just getting the hinges all in line that lock it in there. But very quick and easy to remove, which is a really fantastic feature, especially if you're like me and you end up moving lots of weird stuff. I've had both propellers from the Aztec in here and taken them to the prop shop, so it's a big cabin.